Hey everyone, this is going to be a review of the events leading to the American Revolution, specifically focused on South Carolina. Now, up until this point, we've been learning about the regions, the Native Americans in South Carolina, and the exploration of South Carolina and the colonies by European explorers. Specifically, we've been talking about Hernando de Soto, Juan Pardo, Jean Ribault, and we ended with William Hilton and Henry Woodward, who are both from England. Now, those two English explorers were the only two who were able to establish lasting settlements. With all this, even though some of the motives of these explorers were to develop positive and good relationships with the Native Americans, there were actually still lots of conflicts over land and how trade was happening. And also, there were still conflicts with land with other European countries. And so we will start looking at the French and Indian War, and we will go to looking at the Stamp Act, boycotting, the Tea Act, the Tea Parties, the Intolerable Acts, the First Continental Congress, and the Revolutionary War beginning. Now, some background information. England claimed the land between the Atlantic Ocean and the Appalachian Mountains. And as you can see here, there's a lot of land that looks like states that we know today. And these states have been around since then, but at the time they were called colonies. And each colony had its own rules, and they didn't really work together, but they were still all a part of England. Here's South Carolina down here. South Carolina had its own troubles, but we're really going to go looking up in this area next. Now, the French and Indian War was a conflict over land between the French, England, and the Native Americans. And so the King of England sent soldiers over to fight over this land in the Ohio Valley River region. England won, but wars are expensive. The cost of lives, but the cost to pay the soldiers, to give them supplies, to get them across the ocean. And the King of England, or Great Britain, and Parliament felt that they had protected the colonies and the colonists and that they should be paying for this war. So how do you think that the king wanted to pay for this? He didn't have extra money. I'll give you a minute to think about it. Yeah, that would be right. Taxes. And taxes are additional fees or money that's paid when you buy something else. For example, when you go to the grocery store, something might be $2, but when you get to the cash register, it says $2.10. That extra 10 cents is a tax that goes to the government. And taxes pay for all kinds of things. Some taxes are fair, and some taxes, we're going to learn, were not fair. So the first tax that we're going to look at is the Stamp Act, and this took place in 1765, about 6 years before the Revolutionary War would begin, and before the conflict really started. The Revolutionary War would begin in 11 years. So the Stamp Act was a tax that a stamp that would need to be purchased to be put on all paper items like newspapers, playing cards, legal documents like birth certificates. The colonists did not like this, and they protested, or they fought back against this by boycotting paper goods and British goods. Now, when you boycott something, you refuse to purchase or use that service. And so when English Parliament, their government, saw that the colonists were not buying any of these things and they weren't making any money from the taxes off of those things, they decided to repeal or take back the Stamp Act, so it wasn't a thing anymore. And so that's one effect of the colonists boycotting, is they actually got Parliament to repeal or take back the Stamp Act. Now, the colonists were really upset about this tax because they had not voted for it. Now, they didn't think it was right to be taxed on something that they weren't represented in Parliament. They weren't given a voice there. And Parliament is the British government over in England. Now, what does this mean? No taxation without representation. Well, this means that the colonists didn't think they should have to pay taxes if they didn't have the chance to vote on that tax. Now, that's not to say that the colonists wanted to send people over and represent them in Parliament necessarily. They really just wanted control over what happened in their colony. They didn't think that a king all the way an ocean away should be able to make decisions for them. So they really just wanted to have the right and the power to make decisions that were specific for them. England did not like this, but the colonies started colonial assemblies anyway. This is called self-government. England, like I said, did not like this, and so they wanted to change the colonists' mind. Here we go with the Tea Act. Now, this wasn't necessarily a tax. The British Parliament passed this Tea Act, and it gave a British tea company, the East India Company, a monopoly. Now, what's a monopoly? It's not necessarily a game. It is when one company has all the rights to sell one thing. And this is a problem because they can make the prices really high or the prices really low of something. Now, England was intending for the East India Tea Company to sell the tea at a much lower cost. Unfortunately, the colonists did not like this good deal because it would put the colonial tea sellers out of business. And so the colonists boycotted or refused to buy or use British tea. Now, this led to something that we know as the tea parties. When tea was shipped to the colonies, people were afraid that some people would still be tempted to buy the tea. And so different colonies did things with the tea. In South Carolina, specifically Charleston, they just took all the tea and locked it in warehouses. But Boston had quite a famous tea party. In 1773, Boston had the Boston Tea Party, a group of colonists who called themselves the Sons of Liberty, dressed up as Mohawk Native Americans and went into the British harbor when they knew a shipment of tea was coming in. They threw the chest of tea overboard. Some first-person accounts have been said to have recorded that there was so much tea in the harbor that it actually turned the water brown. Now, some people think this was a great idea and a great way to show liberty and how they were going to take care of themselves. Some people thought this was wasteful and a way to anger the king. And boy, did they anger the king. So the English Parliament, they put into place the Intolerable Acts. And these were some laws that punished Boston and the whole Massachusetts colony for the Boston Tea Party. They started the Quartering Act. They closed the Boston Harbor, and they took away the Massachusetts right to self-govern. So Massachusetts was completely isolated off from the rest of the colonies from the waterways. And so they couldn't get the food and things that they need. So South Carolinians, along with other colonists, sent rice and money by land to help the people of Boston survive with the closing of their port. Now, a lot of things have been going on, and some of the colonies were starting to get very frustrated. They were all frustrated for different things, but they were frustrated mostly at Great Britain. And so they decided to send representatives to Philadelphia and hold the First Continental Congress. There, they talked about all their frustrations, and they wrote a letter to the King of England telling them that they were against the things that they had been doing. They also decided to start organizing militias or small groups of soldiers and starting to boycott British goods. They also planned to meet a year later to see if their needs had been met. The colonists did not want to go to war with England because, like we said, wars are expensive. But they were going to meet again to decide what was their next course of action if England was going to listen to what they were saying. Well, unfortunately, England did not react the way that the colonists wanted, and England did not like that they were forming militias, and they did not like that they were boycotting British goods. And so more and more British soldiers, or redcoats, were sent over to the colonies. The first shots of the Revolutionary War were fired in two Massachusetts towns of Lexington and Concord. British troops had heard that people were starting small armies, and these were not professional soldiers. These were shopkeepers and farmers and carpenters and blacksmiths, people that had regular jobs. The British soldiers marched to these towns, and at some point during these days, shots were fired and the war had started. Now, after all this happened, the representatives still met again at the Second Continental Congress, and they chose that they were going to have to go to war with England and that they needed a fierce and noble leader to be the general of the Continental Army, or the army that would represent the colonies. So they chose a fierce general who had fought bravely at the French and Indian War, and his name was George Washington. The King of England declares that the colonies were in a state of rebellion, and soon the British and the Continental armies would fight in several battles. Also, at the Second Continental Congress, they decided that they needed to write a declaration of their independence. And so they wrote a formal letter and they asked for Thomas Jefferson to write most of it. And it listed all the reasons why the colonies had the right to be independent from England. And they listed out that men have certain rights, that all men are created equal, and they have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The representatives from all different colonies signed this document on July 4th, 1776. Now, you might recognize that date, but that is July 4th, our Independence Day, and we celebrate it because of the signing of the Declaration of Independence on this day. Now, you're going to be working on some activities to prepare for your quiz. And so let's just look and see if we can't fill in this together. So this closed the Port of Boston and took away the Massachusetts self-government. Well, I know it was one of the acts. I don't think it was the Tea Party. So just pause the video and look at the word bank up here and see if you can't fill in the answer to that first one. Yeah, it was the Intolerable Acts. Very good. Let's see. The tax issued stamps, which added a tax to all printed items. I see a key word in here is stamps. Pause your video and see if you know what goes in there. All right, if you said the Stamp Act, you would be correct. All right, colonists decided to organize militias and boycott British goods. Yeah, it was the First Continental Congress. This gave the British Tea Company a monopoly to sell tea in the colonies. I see tea twice in there. Pause the video and see if you can figure out which of these in the word bank goes with number 4. All right, if you said the Tea Act, you are correct. Ooh, the first shots of the Revolutionary War were fought here. Well, I know it's going to be a location, so I'm going to look in the word bank for the names of a city or more than one city. Yeah, Lexington and Concord should go there. A group of colonists snuck aboard British ships dressed as Indians, and they dumped the cargo of tea into the ocean. Correct, the Boston Tea Party. This document told the King of England that the colonists believed they should be independent. Yeah, the Declaration of Independence. This caused Great Britain to be in debt, and the reason why they started taxing the colonies. The French and Indian War. So make sure, guys, as you're studying for your quiz, that you stop and start this video and watch it a couple times if needed.